that was, magical moment. That evening, I think, is when it actually happened. We fell in love. And then shortly after that, we were a couple.
For decades, the world believed it was watching a perfect love story unfold on stage. Bjorn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog weren't just the shining stars of ABBA. They were the emotional heart of the band, a couple whose chemistry made millions believe that the harmony they sang about was real. Fans saw romance, unity, and happiness wrapped in unforgettable music. But behind the applause and bright lights, the truth was far more painful. At 80, Bjorn finally opens up about what their marriage was really like, why their divorce quietly broke more than just a relationship, and how that heartbreak led to one of the most emotional songs ever written. This is the story behind The Illusion, and how love, loss, and regret gave birth to The Winner Takes It All. In the summer of 1979, Bjorn Ulvaeus and Benny Andersson withdrew to a quiet cottage on the windswept island of Vigzo, carrying with them fragments of unfinished melodies and emotions they hadn't yet learned how to name. From those scattered musical sketches emerged the earliest shape of what would become The Winner Takes It All. For Bjorn, the song was deeply personal. His marriage to Agnetha was slowly unraveling, and he was searching for a way to translate feelings he could barely speak into the one language he truly understood: music. The first demo bore the working title, The Story of My Life, and it was exactly that, a vessel for confusion, regret, love, and loss. Initially, the song moved at a brisk pace, structured and precise, but that version felt rigid, almost emotionally restrained. Unsatisfied, they set it aside for several days and turned their attention elsewhere. When they returned, everything changed. Benny suggested reshaping the piece in the style of a French chanson, gentler, more fluid, led by a descending piano line that allowed the melody to breathe. To capture the mood, he recorded a rough guide track filled with nonsense French phrases, pure emotion without meaning, and took it home. What followed was a brief but intense outpouring. With whiskey at his side and the weight of an impending divorce pressing heavily on him, Bjorn wrote the lyrics in a single hour. He later admitted it was one of the shortest lyric writing sessions of his life, yet perhaps the most emotionally exhausting. Though both he and Agnetha had agreed that separating was the right decision, the reality of it cut deeply. When he finally handed her the handwritten lyrics, there was no need for explanation. The words spoke too clearly. Agnetha read them, and she broke down in tears, recognizing not just a song, but the quiet ending of a shared life captured forever in melody and memory. Although nearly everyone assumed the song was a direct confession about Bjorn and Agnetha's divorce, Bjorn initially pushed back against that idea. He insisted the story was not a diary entry, but a dramatized reflection inspired by the experience of separation. In real life, he explained, there had been no clear victor and no clear defeat, no single heart that won while the other lost. And yet, for many listeners, that explanation never fully erased what they heard in Agnetha's voice. When she finally sang the song on stage, the quiet ache, the restraint, the barely contained sorrow felt unmistakably real, as though truth was leaking through every note. Bjorn later acknowledged that the grief surrounding their breakup undeniably shaped the song. Even if the lyrics weren't meant to be read word for word as autobiography, they carried a meaning that went far deeper than fiction. For both of them, their separation was emotionally tangled. A moment where love, relief, regret, and loss all existed at once, where both partners were in different ways winning and losing at the same time. What many fans continue to wonder is why Bjorn would ask Agnetha to give voice to something so painfully intimate. Divorce alone is devastating, but standing under stage lights to sing words written by your former husband, words that hint at him moving on, adds another layer of heartbreak. The answer lies in the long, fragile history between them. Their relationship had been straining long before the final collapse, filled with unspoken tensions and emotional fractures. By the time the song reached the microphone, it wasn't about cruelty or control. It was the echo of a love already breaking, turning private pain into something hauntingly universal. From the very beginning, small cracks existed beneath what looked like a flawless marriage. To the world, Agnetha and Bjorn appeared perfectly matched, young, brilliant, united by music and success. But privately, both were consumed by ambition. Their careers demanded everything, often leaving little space for their children, for stillness, or even for the relationship itself. In those early years, they were deeply entwined, almost intoxicated by one another. They married young, driven less by practicality than by the fierce creative passion they discovered together. That intensity powered their music, but it also masked problems they believed they could ignore. At first, their differences seemed manageable. Agnetha longed for safety, reassurance, and emotional warmth. Bjorn, by contrast, leaned towards structure and control. What felt like harmless contrasts early on slowly hardened into fault lines. As time passed, those differences no longer softened each other. They collided. Bjorn later described Agnetha as deeply anxious, constantly fearful that something terrible might happen. Fame only magnified those fears. She worried about accidents, obsessed over their children's safety, feared betrayal stalking fans or sudden tragedy striking while they were on tour. Even rest offered no escape. Sleep brought vivid night terrors, dark visions of loss that left her emotionally exhausted and increasingly fragile. Her anxiety fed into a painful cycle. Afraid she was losing Bjorn, she held on tighter, hoping closeness would protect what they still had. Instead, it pushed him further away. What began as concern turned into emotional strain, and Bjorn found himself overwhelmed. He grew distant, colder, and more rigid, retreating into control as a defense. Echoes of that emotional imbalance would later surface quietly in The Winner Takes It All, not as accusation, but as reflection. There were moments when Bjorn may have sought connection elsewhere, not necessarily out of betrayal, but out of emptiness, searching for something his marriage could no longer provide. That possibility, whether real or sensed, ignited Agnetha's jealousy and anger. Slowly, painfully, love eroded into resentment. What once felt inevitable now felt impossible. In time, she began to accept a devastating truth, that despite everything they had built together, they might not be meant to stay together. Their ending wasn't sudden. It was the slow collapse of two people who loved deeply, feared endlessly, and ultimately could not survive the weight of both. The final fracture came quietly, almost inevitably. As ABBA's once unshakable hold on the public began to soften, the strain inside the band and inside the marriage became impossible to ignore. Their music carried the weight of unresolved emotions, and Bjorn came to believe that separation was the only way forward. Agnetha agreed. On the surface, it was a mutual practical decision. Beneath it, both were haunted by memories of closeness, by the echo of a time when everything had felt alive and certain. For Bjorn, the choice seemed to bring clarity. Life moved forward. But for Agnetha, the aftermath was far harsher. Fame had always unsettled her, and now it collided with divorce, single motherhood, and emotional exhaustion. The pressure took a visible toll. She grew physically and mentally unwell, drifting from one relationship to another, not out of recklessness but desperation, searching for relief from a pain she could not outrun. Some of those relationships blurred professional boundaries, revealing just how vulnerable she had become, how badly she needed someone to anchor her. Loss followed loss. She endured terrifying threats toward her children, forcing her to live in constant fear. Then came the deepest wounds of all, witnessing her mother's suicide, followed shortly by her father's death. Grief stacked upon grief until it became unbearable. Yet she carried it alone. Distrustful of the world and frightened of those around her, she refused to lean on anyone. No close friend, no steady partner, just silence, fear, and endurance. To the public, she remained composed. Privately, she was unraveling. Bjorn's path unfolded differently. He continued to create, writing and composing alongside Benny, channeling emotion into productivity. Love returned to his life with a steadiness Agnetha never found. He built a long-lasting partnership and appeared to regain balance emotionally, mentally, physically. Perhaps that growth would not have been possible had he stayed. Perhaps leaving was necessary for him to survive. Divorce is never symmetrical. No matter how carefully it's explained, no matter how gently it's framed, one heart almost always bears more weight than the other. Bjorn once said there was no winner and no loser in their separation. Yet time tells its own story. One moved forward with companionship and creative renewal. The other learned to live with grief, retreat, and resilience, putting on a brave face while remaining guarded, solitary, and quietly aching. In the end, the music remembered what words tried to soften, that even shared endings can leave one person carrying far more of the loss. Bjorn Christian Ulvaeus was born on April 25, 1945, in the coastal city of Gothenburg, born into a Europe still recovering from the shadow of war. When he was just 6 years old, his family relocated to the quieter town of Vestvik in Kalmar County, a move that would shape his inner world far more than anyone could have imagined. It was there, far from the noise of the city, that Bjorn began absorbing the sounds that would later guide his life. Raised by his parents, A.A. Eliza Victoria and Erik Gunnar Ulvaeus, alongside his younger sister Eva Margareta, he grew up in a modest, close-knit household marked by routine, restraint, and unspoken ambition. As he came of age, Bjorn found an unexpected emotional outlet in American blues. The raw, aching voices of Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, John Lee Hooker, Jimmy Reed, and Little Walter spoke to him in a way words often could not, music that carried sorrow, resilience, and quiet defiance. Before fame ever entered the picture, he fulfilled his military service, a period that further grounded him in discipline and reflection. Long before the spotlight, before harmony and heartbreak became inseparable, Bjorn was already learning how to turn feeling into sound, a skill that would one day define both his greatest triumphs and his deepest regrets. Long before the world learned the name ABBA, Bjorn Ulvaeus was already living a quieter kind of fame as part of the folkschlager group Houtini Singers, once known as the West Bay Singers across Scandinavia. Their harmonies drew devoted crowds and life on the road became Bjorn's classroom. It was during a tour through southern Sweden in 1966 that chance intervened. Their path crossed with the Hep Stars, and Bjorn struck up an immediate bond with the band's keyboardist, Benny Andersson. What began as a friendship quickly revealed something rarer, a shared instinct for melody, structure, and storytelling. Each recognized in the other the partner they had been missing. That same summer, they sat down together and wrote their first song, Isn't It Easy to Say, soon recorded by Benny's band. From there, collaboration became a habit. They slipped into each other's recording sessions, trading guitar lines and keyboard phrases, quietly shaping a sound neither could have built alone. By 1968, their partnership deepened with new compositions, including A Flower in My Garden and a cabaret-styled song about the fading spirit of the 1960s. Though not every effort was embraced at the time, their work steadily found its audience and success followed in unexpected ways. Around this period, Bjorn's personal and professional worlds began to intertwine. While filming a nostalgic television special in 1969, he met a young singer named Agnetha Fältskog, a meeting that would alter his life as profoundly as music ever had. Still, he continued touring with Houtini Singers, even as he and Benny took on production work at Polar Records, crafting songs for other artists and refining their own voice as a duo. By the turn of the decade, their music lingered on Swedish radio for an unprecedented length of time, a quiet signal that something enduring was taking shape long before history fully noticed it. When ABBA stepped back from the spotlight in the early 1980s, Bjorn Ulvaeus did not retreat from creation. He transformed it. Alongside Benny Andersson, he poured his restless energy into musical theater, shaping ambitious works that carried echoes of longing, migration, memory, and love. Projects like Chess, Christina from Duva Ola, and later Mamma Mia allowed him to revisit the past from a distance, turning familiar melodies and themes into something reflective and enduring. Recognition followed not just in awards and nominations, but in the quiet validation that their music could live many lives beyond pop charts. Yet, the past never truly loosened its grip. Decades after ABBA's Eurovision triumph, Bjorn briefly reunited with his former bandmates in a playful, carefully staged moment, separate in execution, but symbolic in meaning. Over the years, honors accumulated, national and international alike, celebrating a legacy that had long outgrown its origins. Still, Bjorn remained forward-looking. He embraced new ideas from composing Eurovision anthems with younger artists to supporting bold experiments that blended music with emerging technology. The most poignant return came not through nostalgia alone, but reinvention. What began as a futuristic concept, ABBA reborn through digital avatars, unexpectedly led the group back into the studio. New songs were recorded not as an attempt to reclaim youth, but as a quiet affirmation that creativity had not abandoned them. The launch of ABBA Voyage felt less like a comeback and more like a reconciliation with time itself. In later years, Bjorn's life softened into moments of warmth and curiosity, creative collaborations, public reflections on leadership and innovation, even gentle humor shared online. When Sweden formally honored ABBA half a century after their greatest victory, it felt less like a coronation and more like closure. Not an ending, but a recognition that some stories once told continue to echo, changing shape but never truly fading.